board. Just one. All right, welcome. Martin, do you want to take it away?
Actually, I'd like to pass it on to Kazu. He's the star of the show.
Fantastic.
Okay. So yeah, based on your agenda, yeah, new tracker Kazu, yes. So new tracker. So I supposed to start creating a software for the daughter board that Martin is working on. Is it true or not? Should I start my own board or?
Yeah. I thought you were starting your own board.
Starting when?
I thought you were starting your own board.
Yes.
Okay, so how are you doing with that?
that is my personal project.
Okay.
It's not necessary for the pico balloon. Yeah, because so I started using our Raspberry Pico with RP 2040. That chip is amazing. It's low cost and has two cores and software. BSP is already there and the development environment already there. So it's great. So I like it. So I definitely moved from the Atmel to RP 2040 now. And so I thought for the Pico Balloon, I thought the Martin, you have designed the daughter board for the Raspberry Pico.
I just haven't made any further progress on it. I've been waylaid by so many other things.
Okay. So are you planning to develop one or?
Oh, no. If you're doing it, why reinvent the wheel?
What?
Right.
Okay. No. I thought you are the hardware and I will in charge of software. No.
Do what you want to do. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I can do it. So in terms of the progress, there are in the software side there are some progress. So I getting familiar with the RP 2040 now. I used PWM and also I2C to control the SI 5351. So I'm ready to develop further software. So first, I probably start porting some code for Whisper Beacon code, Pico Balloon code from existing repositories or project, and then merge the not only Whisper but also APRS code for VHF. That is the plan, but without hardware, there is a hardware. I already put SI 5351, so I can start working on by that the prototype board. But I need some complete board for in terms of the doing real Pico balloon with RP 2040. So that part is not progress because the RP 2040 chip. So I never work that size of the chip. The pin is so tiny, and it's not the pin; it's part of the package, and also the ground. There are no ground pins. It only has a pad. So, this is a chip, and behind the chip there is a huge pad.
Thermal pad, yeah.
Yeah, it's looked like the thermal pad, and as well as its ground. So I never worked that kind of chip before. So I follow the design guideline documentation right now. Okay, so I will develop some hardware for that.
Okay.
I am progressing. So if somebody else wanna try to design the board,
I'll go ahead and finish up with it if that's what you'd like, because I was kind of trying to head off those kinds of problems. First, let's get the software, and we'll worry about the Pi board later, Pi
Okay.
part later. I actually just recently tried to do a what was a DFN6 with a thermal pad, and that made me cry.
Hmm.
You mean
Okay.
soldering it or doing the layout?
The soldering, the footprint looked perfect. Looked at it under a microscope a dozen ways to Sunday, and it looked fine. And I tried soldering it a whole bunch of different ways, and just gave up. It's just too small for me.
So I have some staff who can solder that stuff. If you need ones and twos and don't mind just putting it in the mail down to me, and I can take care of getting it done.
Okay.
I also have some in my inventory at the factory, some reels of the RP2040 chips. If we are going to do board manufacturing.
Mhm.
I bought them a long time ago.
Cool.
For another project that never happened, and now I've got the untouched, unopened reels sitting there.
Cool.
But it is a very cool chip, and there's a lot of really interesting stuff. And maybe on a future call, we can talk a little bit about the CubeSat simulator that's now based on the RP2040 project that we're doing as part of the AMSAT project program. But sorry to interrupt you, Kazu. Let you continue.
Oh, okay. So most likely, so I will order the PCB to JLC PCB with solder. So ask them solder the RP2040 and probably I mean MN5351 as well.
Mhm.
That is, the pin is tiny.
And maybe you could have them put the flash memory on as well.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yes.
It depends on which package you've chosen, but if you're using space and so on, those I don't enjoy those small packages.
Yep, I agree. So far I only used the heat gun and this solder paste to solder the SMD parts, and that has limit. So I never used the stencil, so I am going to start using that one. And also my friend has the reflow oven, so he can give me that one. So I will try that. Okay, so I don't want to commit the deadline, but hopefully I can design finish by end of this month. Yes, and submit everything to GLC PCB end of this month, and get some board back in 2-3 weeks. So it's mid or late February. Yeah, that's
that probably works well, given that Chinese New Year break starts on Friday and isn't over until the beginning of February. So even if you do send us the files out after the end of this week, they won't be touched until the 1st of February.
Oh, okay. Anyway, so I will submit the file 1st of February.
Well, if you get it done earlier, you get in the queue, but essentially it's the same problem. Nothing's going to happen for 2 weeks.
Yep. Yeah, that's all from me.
Okay. So a few of us have been working on these lightweight PCBs, or rather lightweight solar panels. And I think both David and Bo and Ricky have all been doing various things with them. So maybe they could be, and Robert. Oh, no.
I was just waving hi to Ricky and
Okay.
Yeah.
So whoever is working on stuff, let us know what you're doing.
Okay, I can pick it up right now if you'd like to.
Please do, yeah.
Yeah, I have been basically playing with those solar cells, trying to develop a skill set, because those things are fragile, and I have to learn how to do that. But I think I've gotten where I'm using solder paste, and I built a little jig to line them up, and I think I'm pretty close to being able to use them. I sent one beacon up with your last setup, Martin, and unfortunately, when it had finally cleared the clouds, it decided not to talk to me, and so that was the end of that. But it was working on the ground, and the solar cells worked just fine. So I'm quite comfortable that that part of the function was working. So I've got Skip and I are going to do one other thing. I'm going to build two strings of 8 cells long, and we're wondering if you really need to put blocking diodes or anything in there that you, to try and keep the load, could keep the generation up to snuff, because it occurs to us that the resistance of one solar panel setup or one solar panel string is enough that that the system would still run without adding the extra weight and complexity of diodes and management of the solar panels. So we're going to just see what happens if you shade one and just run the other, because we're kind of guessing, well, it might run, might not, but we'll find out the old-fashioned way. So that's one of the things. I also have acquired 2 of the 1.3 gram 20 farad capacitors that seem to be okay. I haven't really done any serious testing, but they're good for 3.8 volts, they say. And when you start looking at an 8 cell string, that seems to me like it might well work. The other thing that I have done that's on the order of miniaturization is this is my first shot. It's a prototype of how to build a lightweight structure to carry things. It is simply a single layer of fiberglass cloth filled with epoxy and allowed to cure in the shape that you want. And because I put flanges on it, it's got the stiffness to hold together anything we want. And this whole structure is less weight than the chicken trays, the foam chicken trays that are commonly used. Not that weight is that important, but on the other hand, if you build something like this, if you want a platform to hold something at a certain orientation, that sort of thing, I can do that with this, whereas the chicken trays are kind of limited in what you can get away with. So that's the progress on making lightweight launching setups. The skill set to do that is a result of attempting to build a fiberglass airplane over the years, and the airplane never flew, but at least some of this can fly. The other thing we're up to here is we've been invited to stage 2 launches for Calaveras County's grammar schools. I'm not exactly sure what levels of kids are going to participate in that, but I think it's going to be the under 8th grade level, which is unfortunate because I'd love to see high schoolers get involved in something that could really challenge them. It'll be at least a month off before we actually do that, and we will be using the QRP Labs beacons because that's what we have. Okay, I'm done.
Hand it over to Bo and Ricky.
Yeah, great stuff. Really cool to see the platform there, and thanks for joining us from Lodi. And also want to say thanks for the extra balloon tracking node, as I'm often watching those things floating around and waiting for them to come back this way a little bit more than your way. But yeah, nonetheless, we've started poking around at the panels and have really just kind of gotten going with some of the basics. Still working on technique. Curious about how your jig's going there, but haven't made any particularly meaningful progress yet. but still very much looking to get some outdoor setups going and just kind of play around with a few different configurations of serial and parallel and figure out how to optimize all that. So yeah, would like to have more to report, but that's it for the moment.
So I just have a couple things here. The question about the diodes, we should probably start asking Alan Johnson, who's the main designer with me on the CubeSat simulator boards, because that's a 6-cell or a 5-cell design. And he's done a ton of work with diodes on those boards and can probably comment better than I can. And then the second thing is down here, Randy's been doing a lot of work with solar cells, more what we call the Bill cells, the Bill ELK cells, and been doing some testing on trying to optimize what the number of cells and the angles and positions of them, you know, instead of just having a pair straight up. And so Randy can probably talk about that, but it'd be helpful, I think, to everybody involved here to work together so we're not duplicating effort.
Sure.
Randy, did you want to comment?
Yeah, so I took, I gotta look at the model number, but the cells Bill uses, I have to look up my notes to see which ones they are, but I got the same ones he uses. I think they're 73 millimeters square. He uses a pair of them. I used 3 of them and I put them around like a plastic cup to support it. And I cut away almost all or about 2/3 of the plastic cup material to get it the structure down to, I think, like about 2.5 or 3 grams. But I did a little experiment. I like just what the kind of power, you know, voltage and current under various loads to kind of draw a curve of a single cell. And then I put 3 of them around a cup. And do you have it set where I can share, or is it locked out? Or?
I'm not,
You
Robert?
can share your screen if you'd like to. You can share your screen.
It says disabled. Host is disabled sharing.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
And the other thing is Randy found the time that I didn't have to do some testing on a bunch of the super caps that I had bought. And so there's been some testing of that. And I think the short version was none of them worked very well.
No, they just, you put any load on them at all, and the voltage immediately drops.
Okay. You can try to share your screen again if you want.
Here we go. Okay. Shit. So can you see that all right? It's
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
Yes.
okay,
Yeah.
so there's 3 solar cells around a pretty chopped up cup. But I did a little experiment where, so here's kind of voltage and current, you know, with various loads. So there's the 3 cells individually, that's the red, black, and green curves, you know, for voltage and current, and then for power. And then the 2, there's like kind of a light blue and a purple curve. That's all 3 in parallel. So there's no diodes to try to isolate them. And I thought the 2 most extreme cases are one where the sun's shining directly at one cell, and then the other is where it's right on the edge between the 2, and it didn't make any difference. So it seemed for, you know, 360 degrees of azimuth, it doesn't make any difference. I actually powered one of those QRP Labs U4B boards with this, and I had it just actually hanging off of a, you know, off of a high wire. I had it with the antenna wires and just hanging there. You know, the wind would kind of twirl it around and spin it, and it worked fine pretty much all day long. And this is without a battery, without any kind of supercapacitor, just straight solar cells. So my plan is, as soon as the weather clears up, my plan is to launch this device. The total weight of it is 15 grams. Launch it with a single Yokohama balloon. But it looks like maybe late next week. The weather's supposed to be nice, so that's kind of my plan for this thing.
Cool. Let's see. David and I have been talking about controllable altitude balloons. I don't know if we've done any more talking since then, but we were thinking about asking Yokohama for different possible balloons. And so the question came up, what might we ask for? And one possibility would be a balloonette. And for controllable altitude, another way of going would be simply a second balloon. And that one would be smaller and stronger. And so we changed mass by just pumping gas from one balloon to the other. And I've been doing some experimenting with pumps and valves and stuff that are super lightweight and so on. And I think that part of it's totally feasible. And so, you know, the question is there anything out there that we should be building that might be useful for us? I really think controllable altitude would be a lot of fun. Okay. Well, moving on then.
Hey,
Hey,
Mike,
there you go.
hold on a second. Sorry, Bo's at the controls, and I was curious what you're testing so far. What have you learned about like power draw and requirements for the pumps that you've been playing with? Like, I guess what I'm ultimately asking is if we're powering them under solar as well as the electronics, what does that total package end up looking like?
Well, it's a blank piece of paper for right now. And so far I found that there's valves that need power to be actuated. So things would close off at night or whatever. And there are little micro pumps that can be operated on the kind of power that we're talking about. So one question would be, is there the right balloon material to do a two balloon system? And might Yokohama be able to build something for us using a balloonette or something? And maybe there's some other options as well. I invited Pedro Converso from AMSAT Argentina, and he didn't make it. But they have actually done a little bit of tinkering with this, and they had, I think, a balloonette going. David, do you remember anything about that, or?
I do not know anything about it.
Okay, but I think they had some fair success with that, and I just don't know what the status is. But you know, there's a lot of different ways of doing it, and you know, it's kind of sad, you know, watching Google Loon, you know, spend all that money on helium really did hurt. But maybe there's a way of doing it on a bigger budget. Who knows? So. Yeah, so that's what we're interested in, and there's, you know, basically it's changing the mass of the device, and you know, hopefully it doesn't involve ditching stuff, or carrying, you know, pressurized containers or something like that, just by pumping gas around or something like that. Okay. So recently I've been working on a crossband repeater. Should come in around 20 grams or so. It'll have an output of 0.5 watt. And it should operate under maybe 2.5 watts, 2 watts, something like that. And I was looking to do a solar panel for that. And you know, the really large cells should be able to do that fairly easily and keep it on a budget. Using the power film really gets expensive in a hurry, and especially for higher power cell arrays. I built one and was able to get a couple of watts out of it without any problem. So I just have to be a little bit more careful about what I'm doing, or hand it off to somebody who wants to be careful with it.
Crossband repeater sounds like lots of fun.
Oh yeah.
Martin, what are you using for the RF modules?
Oh, okay. Do you know the old SA828?
Yeah.
So they have a new improved one, and actually it's now 1.5 watts or 0.5 watt. But it also features a little audio detect circuit. So all that's necessary, for some reason or another, they didn't make it so you can even cross connect them. You have to do a logic flip for the audio detect to push to talk. In any event, I was thinking about using a little 320, using one of my little tracker boards just to keep it all together perhaps do automatic identification and things like that.
So is that the SRFRS 0V5 or whatever, or 05V modules? They're about half the size of the 818 module.
818. Don't know. Here, let me see if I can get one on the screen for you. So
In the meantime, I'll try and find what I'm looking for too.
okay.
Jim, have you told him about my crossband repeater?
No, we haven't talked about your crossband repeater either.
Okay.
Let me see, I'm trying to think, what do I do here? There we go. So you've seen these before. This is actually mounted on a little proto board that Nice RF provided. And so it's SA828 version 2 point something. Can you all see that, or?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
mostly.
And in any event, even the PCB comes in under 10 grams.
So the module is that 828 number, or the whole thing, or just the little module, the RF module itself?
Okay, I reached out to Nice RF in Shenzhen, and they sold me these modules.
Let me just
So they go under the SA828, and there was a previous version that isn't quite the same.
so this is the module that we're using on the CubeSat simulator. There's both, they make both a UHF and a VHF version.
Ouch. I think that's kind of expensive, isn't it?
Well, no, this isn't where I buy them from. I buy them directly from the manufacturer. They're $4.
Okay.
They're $4 each, and they're about half the size of the module that looks like you're using. And the maximum power is 0.5 watt.
Okay.
It's got the same RxTX UART interface that all of these modules have, with virtually identical AT command sets. But it's
Okay.
basically, you've got your mic, antenna, PTT, power down, audio out, and one pin to give you some kind of squelch that you can adjust in the firmware.
Mhm.
So that's what we've been using. And then Phil's been working on a Raspberry Pi based, I'll talk because Phil's kind of tired and so on, but it's basically a Raspberry Pi based board that David, WD60RI and I did, which has this RF module on it. And for the transmit side and for the receive side, it's got like an RTL SDR, and it listens for multiple channels across the band and then can mix them and downlink them simultaneously, so that you can have, I forget what Phil had set up for, but it was something like 5 channels.
I think I can push to 7. Actually, the dongle is a AMSAT UK FunCube.
Oh, FunCube.
Samples 192 kilohertz complex, and I can easily fit 7 FM channels into that. The idea, this is a prototype for something, if it works well, I'd like to put on the ISS, because a single channel FM repeater is just not very good.
Hey.
FM with a lot of contention just doesn't work very well.
Yeah. So, but Martin, back to your thing about the crossband repeater, some kind of way to lift it and get long duration. We should probably talk more, because MSAT has asked for someone to try and put one together that can be launched on one side of the country and make it completely across the country, and have an event to have people trying to talk through it all the way across as it goes.
So that would definitely depend on hitting the what's it called, jet stream, and I think that's the only way it would be feasible. So it would be one of these things where we'll plan on trying not around this window, time window, and have like some kind of an announcement mechanism.
Yeah. So I agree. We have to figure out the long duration stuff and getting it to float. And we've been doing some experimenting here.
Mm-hmm.
My biggest concern is power.
So, a few watts is definitely doable. I'm hoping by the end of the month that we can do something like that. One of the other things I was thinking about is also playing around with flight profiles. And one thing is a rapid ascent and then loiter kind of profile. And so I was thinking of using a HAB to actually get up to float altitude rather quickly. And one thing that I've started doing with the HABs is using a cutoff at the neck. So at a certain prescribed altitude, you just release the HAB and leave a string behind, and then the rest of the mechanism would be floating.
Floating on what?
Say again?
Floating on what?
Oh, okay. Say a Yokohama or whatever.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. Or several Yokohamas, depending.
If you can get enough lift out of them, yeah.
Yeah.
So how would you release them? Like you'd have the latex balloon take it up quickly, and then how do you have it separate?
Do a cutoff on the HAB neck.
Oh, okay.
Just release.
Right?
Just a nichrome, like a nichrome cutoff or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
It really doesn't take that much nichrome to do that, or energy or anything else. Yeah.
Oh, cut the balloon directly instead of cutting a string or line.
No, cutting a piece of nylon strand, just a really lightweight piece of.
Oh, okay.
string.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd also be nice for launching if you got a little bit of wind. You don't have such a slow ascent rate that you have to only let it go and it's completely calm. And
Oh yeah.
Randy was into really into launching floaters a couple of weeks ago, and I got very worried about, well, what happens if they kind of drag on the ground?
we're trying to turn latex balloons into floaters, and I think it wasn't really, none of them really floated. They would either rise and burst or they wouldn't go very high. So that's, I think elastic balloons just, you can't get them to level off.
Well, you did get it to go pretty far, a lot farther than we normally go.
Well, they go far, but they don't like level off though. They
Yeah,
rise
well,
and
we also had a lot of trouble with the neck lift with even the tiniest bit of breeze.
Mm-hmm.
When we were doing it in the parking lot at the school, it was nearly impossible because you just think, okay, I've just got the lift right, and then a gust would come along and
Yeah.
we'd have no idea whether we were right or not.
Yeah, so I did a what was it, a 100 milligram floater that actually did kind of work. That's the one that went by you guys. And unfortunately, it did take forever to get up to float altitude, but once it reached float altitude, it really was asymptotic for quite some time. So
was this a latex balloon or like a,
yes, latex, yeah.
it was okay.
I mean, once they launched from the radiosondes from Vandenberg, half the ones there, at least earlier this year, were floaters. And those are the
I
latex.
think that's a mistake. I have a feeling whether because they're actually a little heavier than the newer models, they don't know the right amount of gas to put in for them.
No, I mean 100% it's a mistake, but it can be done, and we just got to figure out.
Yeah, but
how they
I've
were
seen those
doing it.
too. I mean, a bunch of them from right before one SpaceX launch.
Yeah.
I mean, they basically floated down to Orange County before the batteries ran out.
Yeah. So unfortunately, I don't know anybody at the launch site there to
And
ask.
they've
them.
launched a lot in the last 12 hours.
Oh
Yeah, there's a
God, have they
SpaceX
ever?
launch.
Hey, Randy, you keeping a list of all these extra sons?
Only the ones that are gettable, and what I mean by gettable is they're west of the Salton Sea.
Well, I mean, there are a lot of them.
Yeah, well, there's a couple of guys who've been getting them to the east of the Salton Sea, and like let them have them. But that's kind of my boundary is drive out to the Salton Sea, but not beyond. And then also I won't go over to the ones that there's all that farmland to the south of the Salton Sea, so that's not going to last long, if they land out there. But out in the middle of the desert where I've gotten a lot of them, no one's going to touch those for a long time.
Yeah, they seem to be coming from the Scripps Oceanography Pier.
They actually are. So there's a group that I've been in contact with, and so they've been studying these atmospheric rivers, and so they actually had planned. They said they're going to start at 10 a.m. yesterday, which they did, and they're going to keep launching them every 3 hours until this phenomenon stops. And they've been just sticking to that 3-hour schedule. They just launched another one, about 30 minutes ago. So
It's probably the same people that I emailed and talked to a couple of years ago about the atmospheric river up here.
Okay, yeah,
And the 3-hour period was only because they have one receiver on the ground.
oh,
and
they gotta wait till
can't
it lands.
Do multiple channels, and I'm like,
Oh, we
oh
can
no.
help them with that.
I mean, yeah, but you know, the official Vaisala receiver, yada yada yada, are apparently very expensive.
Yeah, we can help with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah, and I've seen they've launched in the last 12 hours. There's been 8 or 9 from Vandenberg.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's
well,
a
I think
SpaceX
that launch
launch
has
coming
been
up,
put
too.
off until at least tomorrow.
Yeah, they
Okay.
keep pushing it back because they're just not good for weather.
But normally, yeah, that a big flurry out of Vandenberg usually means a launch is coming up.
And you know, and we can and that is either an announced or not announced launch.
Right.
So you guys were mentioning kind of floaterish ones. You're saying some of the ones down south are staying up longer than usual?
When Vandenberg does a launch with their LMS 6s, I think, they seem to be using both old and new models, 6A, I believe. And for some reason, the older models ascend more slowly and actually float for a long time while the newer ones go up. I have a theory about that. I have no idea if it's true, but my theory is that they don't really understand that there's a difference in weight here, and they're putting the same amount of gas in the balloons for all of them. And the heavier ones end up floating. That's just a hypothesis. I have no idea if it's true.
Yeah, I had an interesting recent observation on something similar. So I think the LMS6s have quite a bit of battery compared to the RS-41, but there was a really odd launch out of Oakland fairly recently that went all the way to the middle of Nevada. And I actually have a contact with someone that maintains the facility there. And they said that launch was the end of the hydrogen bank. So it was able to fill it enough to meet the launch requirement, but it totally changed the characteristics and created the extended flight.
Oh. Well, this has been happening repeatedly out of Vandenberg. But I don't think we know anybody there who's launching them. And they also seem to have a burst timer that cuts them off pretty early. So we can't recover them easily or at all.
Yeah, and a lot went out of that facility north of Yuma.
Yeah, that's also military, isn't it?
Yeah, but they're all coming down just outside of Phoenix. So John could go out and recover all of them.
Does anybody know who's coordinating the launches coming out just north of Point Reyes on the coast?
that's the same UCSD atmospheric river project.
Gotcha.
Here, I'll post a.
It must have a big box of these things.
Yeah, I bet.
They're all pretty old too.
I can tell.
Well, they were launching a bunch of the U ones, which were made in 2022, but they just launched a T. So maybe they used a, and they're all U074s, but they're just a T is like, that's like, you know, it's an older one.
Oh, Randy, they might call you. They might start calling you in a panic.
yeah, just put some new batteries in there. Let's see, what do they cost a piece? I'll sell them to for half off.
I think they're probably a few $100. The problem, of course, is the sensor stock is probably ruined. So
I'm sure, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. The other thing we were going to mention on this call, like Gene didn't make it in here, is Gene B9COY did a whole lot of reverse engineering for the pressure sensor in the RS-41s. And so his firmware now can read all of the pressure values during our flights using Mark's base. We started using Mark's base firmware, and then Gene started over from scratch so we could do things like put our own cameras and do essentially slow scan TV from the RS-41s.
How much are those? How much weight are those pressure sensors? Mass.
Randy,
I could find out right now.
do you have one handy that you could check?
Let's see.
I weighed it all, but I'd have to go dig up the spreadsheet.
Yeah, no, but for the cameras, the cameras are just cheap Chinese
Yeah.
UART-based cameras, and when we're using Gene's ground software, it lets us get a couple hundred stills throughout the flight. And
That's using the multiple receiver diversity stuff, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that diversity makes all the difference.
Oh,
Gene
yeah.
doesn't really have very good coding in there, but just having all those receivers makes all the difference.
Oh, yeah.
So these little, I don't think that focuses on it. Here, is that pressure sensor?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
3.5 grams.
The little daughter board.
Very
Yeah, it sticks on
cool.
the back of the RS 41. So
Yeah,
yeah,
all the ones down here all have that board.
yeah.
Yeah, those are the RS-41 SGPs versus just the SG.
Right, the P means
correct. The P.
sensor.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's the only ones I've seen used here.
Yeah, so for us, we spent a lot of time trying to get the BMP, BME 280 modules working well. And while the P works okay, the E modules really don't like moisture. And
And they short circuit.
and they short out the power supply when they fail.
We put some BMEs on an RS-41, and it was on a day it was raining, and it quit sending data, and a few seconds later the sonde itself quit. And the next week it wasn't raining, but it was overcast layer. But what I did instead is they don't draw, I don't remember the exact numbers, they don't draw much current, and the RS-41 could put out like, you know, maybe a factor of 100 more current than it takes to kill them when they draw. So I put a 150 ohm resistor in series with it. So that way, if it shorts out, it doesn't take the sonde with it. And sure enough, it quit, but the sonde kept on going. The other limit I found on the BMEs, I put some in dry ice and then, you know, started pulling a vacuum on them, and the pressure got all wacky on it. And if you look at the spec, they're only spec'd down to -40 for the temperature for the minimum, and down to 300 hectopascals for the minimum pressure. So we're running them above about 10,000 meters. We're running them, you know, out of the range that they're supposed to be on temperature and pressure. So they're really not useful for high altitude.
But,
Yep.
but now that Gene reverse engineered the protocol for using the stock sensors, we don't bother using the BME, BMP 280 modules ever.
Yeah. We did this experiment where we ran, I put two sondes in a pressure, a vacuum chamber. One was a stock with the stock firmware, so I could read the data it was having, and the other was with Gene running the software. And actually the first round is he ran the software, he's looking at how the data changed at different levels of pressure from 1 atmosphere to a vacuum in about 5 steps. And then he figured it out. He saw it was changing, it made sense. And so he set the software, and then with his new software, we put one of his 4 FSK sondes with that software and one of the stock ones that run with the weather service, and ran them both at different pressures, and they were identical. So he figured it out. So it's pretty cool.
It turns out once you figure out the protocol where the bits go, the pressure is stored as a nice 32-bit value that stores a single float value. Not encrypted, nothing fancy, standard NDNS. It was staring you right there easily.
Should we plan on that for the Pi tracker, the Pico tracker?
You could use the module from an RS-41 if you wanted to.
Yeah, I think Bo has a big pile of them that probably aren't doing them any good. And lots of other people out there too.
I don't remember whether Gene has all of this stuff on his GitHub or not, but we could easily get it shared with you if you guys want that code. It's just a SPI-based interface, if I remember correctly.
Right.
And I've got like a ton of them, because when we resend them up, so we've been with the students at the high school sending them up reprogrammed to 4 FSK, but we haven't up till now been using the pressure sensor. So just to save some weight, I've just been removing them. So I've got like a drawer full of them now.
Perfect.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and I don't know what your cutoff time is. I assume it's an hour, but Martin, thank you for inviting us to this, because this has been awesome. Kazu, one of the things we talked about at PacificCon was to work together on the geofencing stuff.
Oh yeah.
If you're getting back and writing some more code, just shoot me an email to remind me, and I'll try and dig up everything that I've found.
Sure.
Because
That would be Kazu. Yeah.
yeah, because Yeah, because I think we can figure that out. It's we don't have a good answer, but I think we can put together the best solution that's available to us.
So
Okay.
is this to like not transmit over North Korea?
Yes.
So I've been curious, suppose you did, would they even notice? What would they do about it? Like send up a drone with a sharp stick to poke your
I don't know, they could file a complaint with the ITU.
Oh.
Maybe.
Yeah, let's not do that.
I don't know. So anyway, sorry, Martin, I'm
Oh, no, this is great. No, I'm really, I think it's wonderful that we're all getting together and finding out what we're doing because we don't have to duplicate so much stuff. Let's see, I'm actually making some headway at Chabot Space and Science Center and would appreciate any assistance that anybody might want to lend. I'll probably be getting started with something called a Tinkerthon that occurs on a Saturday at the place. And it runs all day long. And I don't know what exactly I'll do right now, but I'd like to have some kind of introduction to radio. I don't know if it's possible to do balloon launches or not, but we'll see. I'm still learning as I'm going and just making a little bit of progress now.
Martin, I'm just curious, what grade level is this program supposed to be targeted at?
I imagine upper public school. It might even trying to be reaching below that, but I don't see how a lot of the science involved would be involved until at least 7th or 8th grade, something like that. But the idea is to get people's interest or whatever. It's the Space and Science Center, so there's a connection there somewhere.
Because we've done radio related things at all levels of the public school system. I for years until we got banned for doing too many of them, I was kind of the person in charge of doing all the RS events in San Diego area. We did too many, and then NASA said, we need you to not do any for a while. But part of that is educational programs for the students, and we focused on elementary schools. So we've done a fair bit of things that are lesson plans that all the way to kindergarten, we have to try and do something with radio.
Cool.
And so we were able to come up with curriculum, or even, I don't know how long you need to do this, but we're talking like half an hour top type thing.
That sounds perfect.
To talk about things that the students might not realize about radios. They may not realize that the cell phone in their pocket has a whole bunch of radios. They may not realize the garage door opener has a radio. They may not know that their Wi-Fi enabled refrigerator has a radio, those sorts of things.
Mm-hmm.
And so we did things like that, or the small incandescent bulb across a pair of brass rods tuned to VHF frequencies to show the energy being transmitted as waves. And we did all kinds of little experiments. And the one that they most liked, if I remember correctly, was we had them doing a fox hunt.
That's definitely on the plan. Yeah, absolutely.
They really enjoyed running all over the school campus with a handheld Yagi, trying to figure out where the beacon was coming from.
Bo has a little what's it called, tape measure Yagi program that would be perfect for that, where you make your own Yagi and then we can go around chasing a fox. But that sounds great.
Yeah, Ricky and I have done a couple of workshops on that, and I mean, definitely get with some full-size folks in the room, but I think kids would enjoy it. And like I said, yeah, definitely participating in the fox hunt aspect.
Yeah, getting to run around the campus and trying to listen for it was good. We didn't run it like a field day fox hunt. We basically let the transmitter pretty much run continuously so that they wouldn't get tired of waiting for 10 minutes for the blip or something. But they enjoyed it.
Okay, let's see. thought Robert might want to tell us a little bit about drone rules. We were like discussing videoing our activity, and then the rules came up. And actually, I was talking to Phil at PacificCon about the rules for if we start doing things like controllable altitude. If we're going to run into problems with FAA, if they will start treating it like a drone. And I don't want to play a lawyer, but it feels awfully close to a drone to me. Once you start sending telecommands to a device in the air.
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm not too sure on the controllable altitude device
yeah.
as far as them being considered drones. I mean, the FAA doesn't really consider like drones like as a specific item. They're called unmanned aircraft systems, and there's rules that apply with those. And maybe it goes to what their definition of an unmanned aircraft system, like what is that definition, and if that controlled altitude balloon fits in that description or not, that I'm not sure. But I am familiar with the drone rules. I had the FAA license part 107 to be able to fly our drone for our club here and shoot some videos of our balloons going up and posting those on YouTube. So the part 107 allows us to do that. But yeah, as far as control altitude balloons, I'm not sure on that front. I'm not sure who we could ask about that.
Yeah, if they're controlled altitude, they're no longer lighter than air, are they?
Well, no, it's just a matter of changeable mass, rather changeable density.
Well, I think the section we've been operating under is lighter than air, right? That's the term for a balloon.
Oh, yeah. But
Yeah.
you can change your density without while staying lighter than air.
Well, but then you're no longer lighter than air.
Yeah, if it's
Well,
like
you're
At a constant altitude, you're equal to the air, right? I think the reason why balloons are treated relatively leniently is because we're up and out of there, right? We're up and out of there quickly.
Well, not our floaters. We've been sending.
Well, that's my point. That's my point.
I'm not sure if I understand.
Okay. I mean, they define a balloon as a lighter than air aircraft, right? And the reason why they're treated relatively leniently is because a lighter than air balloon gets off and ascends very rapidly. It's just out of the way very quickly. It's not likely to cause a problem. But as soon as you start controlling its density, so there's no longer lighter than air, it means it's at a constant altitude where it can be more of a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's why that's why I brought it up.
Yeah. No, actually, I'd anticipate requesting waivers to do this sort of thing. This is something I really wouldn't want to run afoul of the law with. So,
you can also get small ADSB transmitters now. I mean, they start to look like they might be practical, except maybe for cost.
Yeah, in terms of the FAA's concerns, it's been a couple of years now, but I had a conversation with Oakland Air Traffic Control Center specifically about sending up these kinds of balloons. They were completely uninterested in the lightweight ones. And I think that it's basically those things can be, the stuff we send up can be devoured by a jet engine and it doesn't even burp. I don't think that the category of lighter than air or not lighter than air is really relevant. That it reaches a point of neutral buoyancy doesn't change that it's lighter than air at ground. It's just at equilibrium up at say 40,000 feet.
Yeah, but I think any drone above 250 grams is controlled by the rules, yet we can fly several kilograms and not be. So I mean, we can hang a drone on a balloon, suddenly it's no longer a problem.
No, you can't fly several kilograms with no concern. You're going to have to talk to the FAA about that.
Well, I mean up to, it's 4 or 6, but whatever, the exempt rules, you know what I'm talking about, the rules.
Yeah.
My point is that those weight limits are higher than the weight limits on an uncontrolled drone.
Oh yeah, I suspect that they made their rules up when the radiosondes were heavier than they are right now, and just said, that hasn't caused a problem. So
exactly, right.
But I don't think there's any concern about definition, because when you release it, it's absolutely lighter than air. that it happens to come to equilibrium with something at altitude, I don't think bothers them. I think they just want you to go away, kid, you bother me.
Yeah, well, I mean, I still don't want to get ingested by a jet engine, even if we're light.
Well, you can't ride my balloons then.
I have a connection with somebody that's very familiar with some of the FAA rules at Pilot Institute, so I can reach out with him and see if he has any.
I would really like to make an informal inquiry here. No, the thing, there's just the old saying about begging forgiveness rather than asking permission, but I definitely want to make some quiet inquiries here and really understand how they think. I mean, neither one of us wants to get ingested by a jet engine.
Yeah, Oakland Air Traffic Control was the place where I spoke with them because I contacted the Stockton Airport and they said, well, go talk to Oakland. So I did. It's been a long time since I've done any serious flying, but I've got a flight instructor certificate, so I'm pretty familiar with flight. And I thought that they were completely unimpressed with what we're doing.
Oh, I'm not surprised. I did a little looking. Apparently there was one documented case of weather balloon bringing down an airplane that happened in the 60s in Russia. So you can imagine what a Russian radio sonde in the 1960s looked like.
So we saw something recently said there's now been 7 in the US impacts or something. But
Between weather balloons and aircraft?
yeah.
Oh, I want to know about that.
I think it was 7 last year or something. It was
In 1 year?
Yeah, it was a number much higher than I expected, but there were no issues.
Oh, I want to know about that.
I wanted to know more too, but I couldn't find out. I just saw some talk somewhere, and then.
I mean, even if you don't bring down an airplane, if you cause any damage at all, it's probably more than any of us are willing to pay.
Mm-hmm. My understanding is that most airports these days do, or at least most commercial airports do have APRS, and they see what you're doing.
APRS, really?
Yeah.
Oh, well, we're not using APRS anymore.
Yeah, sadly. Well, at least we may start using it. Yeah.
Well, if Whisper is sent to APRS, you are using it.
Okay, if we gateway it in, yeah, but
gateway back in again. Okay.
But our up and pop flights are not using it anymore. We're using the 4FSK stuff, which is unique to us.
Right, but if we get some help from our good pal Kazu here to be able to reuse the same RF chip for some of these new boards to be able to do both Whisper and APRS, then maybe we can start thinking.
Yeah, I've also thought about relaying our own data into FlightAware and Flight Radar and all those networks. I mean, I know they're not official, but it's one way you could see all that traffic together.
That sounds like a really cool idea, actually.
I mean, they're crowdsourced networks already to start with, so just feed it whatever right whatever the right bits are to indicate that it's very small light in air. I mean, I think there already is a field for indicating that you're a balloon. I mean, I've seen that when the Goodyear blimp flies out here, it showed up as a balloon.
Okay, well, good. I think I've covered everything I wanted to, and if any people have anything else further to discuss, or otherwise, we've made it to an hour, so I don't want to take people's evenings away from them.
Yeah, the only item we had left, Martin, was the SF-HAB website and and then stabilized payload. Those were the last 2 items.
Okay. Yeah, if anybody's interested in doing a stabilized payload as well, I'd really be interested in tinkering with that. And given the fact that in a HAB setting, you do have one dimension constrained, it's actually a simpler problem. And it's been done before, NASA does it all the time. And I think it would make a super interesting payload.
I have been thinking a lot about that, actually.
Okay.
I haven't done anything concrete, but I've been thinking about the problem a lot. I mean, one possibility, at least for cameras, is to, just get some of the same gimbals that are used on drones. They certainly work well.
Oh, yeah. I think you can do it with 2 gimbal gyros, and that's all you need.
Well, yeah, sure, but I mean, how small and light can you make them? The ones on drones are already, I mean, they already solved exactly the same problem. Actually,
yeah.
this problem
Oh, yeah.
in 3 dimensions.
Yeah, so I think that would be really interesting with that, and say articulated arms for either antennas or astronomy or something like that. It could be really interesting.
Yeah. I mean, think more about payloads you can put on these things.
Oh, yeah.
Many of them. I mean, I have a Geiger Muller kit I haven't put together yet. Small enough to fly.
Actually, speaking of that kind of stuff, yeah, it's really fun to do that. If you're using a real Geiger Muller, be aware that there's passions, water or whatever, where you start arcing at low pressure.
Yes, yeah, you have to be careful because there is high voltage in there.
Yeah.
But what I think might intrigue high school students to fly something like this is, I forget the guy's name, but somebody won a Nobel Prize for doing basically this, for showing that cosmic rays increased as you went up. And you can have high school students repeat an experiment that got somebody a Nobel Prize. When I was in high school, we redid the milk and oil drop experiment. I was really impressed that, a bunch of us high school students could, recreate a Nobel Prize winning experiment. That was memorable. And so we could have kids do the same with another experiment.
So I've actually been looking at doing a lightweight gamma ray spectrography, and that looks doable too.
Yeah,
So-
I guess I've seen portable gamma ray spectrometers you can buy, like radiation tech. I didn't know they were available. You
Randy
can
has
actually
mine.
tell what's generating what you're seeing.
Yeah.
Randy has my gamma sensor that we bought to fly on a balloon.
It's a sensor or a spectrometer?
Oh, sorry, it's a sensor. It's a sensor, but it's the simple stuff that we were looking at was all just MOSFET and MOSFETs and a big fat
Okay.
amplifier to count particles.
I mean, a spectrometer will tell you, the energy of each of these
Yeah.
particles, which can be very useful. Well, if you're trying to identify something radioactive.
Yeah, well, with the right software in this, I think the technology behind the ones that we were looking at could do that.
I mean, a Geiger Muller tube will not, of course.
Mhm.
Right, but the stuff that I was looking at, in the board that I kind of did an initial design of, would give you an indication of energy of each particle.
Okay, that's useful. I just saw a YouTube video last night of some guy who found cesium-137 on a trail in Montana and attributed to one nuclear test that was conducted back in the 50s or 60s that blew in that direction. I mean, not dangerous, but he was able to identify it. Cesium-137 is artificial. It couldn't have been anything else.
Oh, yeah, no, the stuff we were doing was just a basic gamma detector, but had the ability to measure energy.
Yeah. He actually had, he could show a spectrum. He had a little Android phone showing a spectrum.
Yeah, the spectrum is more effort, and I would be most
Yeah,
interested
but
in
it was a
being
small
able to-
commercially available handheld detector. I didn't know they were available.
There's actually some open source projects for that. There's several of them. And I believe
Oh.
you can make it. So you're using these photo detector sensors. I forget what they're called now, but they luminesce based on the radiation impinging on them. And
Cesium
I'll-
iodide, I think.
yeah, in any event, I will post some links for that, but they look like they're
Okay.
lightweight enough to fly. So that would definitely be a fun payload. Something else that we've talked about for a long time would be a VLF downloader. Get away from all the QRM and sample the lowest 300 megahertz or so and send it down.
Oh, okay. I think you mean 300 kilohertz.
It could be, yeah.
Well, you said 300 megahertz. That's
Yeah.
still a bit,
It's not particularly low.
yeah.
Say again?
300 megahertz isn't particularly low frequency.
No.
Yeah. But the entire band, it would be totally possible to sample all that and send it down.
Yeah, we're just doing spectrum surveys.
hmm
Although doing a spectrum survey in the ham bands might ruffle some feathers.
We're spying on people.
No, just showing how idle most of our spectrum is.
Oh, okay, let's not do that. Yeah.
Yeah, right. I mean, I have 2 years of recordings now of 2 meters, 70 centimeters and 125 centimeters. And I'm doing this in, probably the most the hottest RF spot in the US when it comes to the ham band, Southern California. And boy, there's still a lot of idle spectrum.
I guess the good thing though is the wireless industry, the antennas just get too large. I mean, you really push it if you try to do 400 megahertz. So I don't think there's going to be much demand for, anything.
Well, they were certainly, I'm sure they would be eyeing 23 centimeters, although that may go away because of Galileo. Actually, I would think I might ruffle the feathers of some repeater owners, repeaters that, get a chunk maybe once a week.
Yep.
Seriously.
Publish a report of least used repeater frequencies.
Yeah, well, the problem is, down here you can't get anything. Oh, the channels are all taken. They were taken 20 years ago. But if you could show them how many are actually being used, this might start a fight.
Well, let's not do that.
Yeah, well.
Yeah.
One other thing I'd like to ask of people, if anybody have any interest in getting a wiki going for this, because I think some of these projects would probably be best habitated in a wiki format.
That would be good.
I just I'm not good with that kind of stuff. We currently have a WordPress installation. I just did nothing and it came up.
Well, I've made enough edits to Wikipedia, the real Wikipedia. I mean, if it's the same thing, somebody sets it up, then it wouldn't be hard to do.
Okay, that's a thought too. Yeah. Well, I was thinking for our specific projects, would that be suitable on Wikipedia?
I think so.
Okay.
I mean, a
Cool.
lot of projects on GitHub seem to have their own wikis.
Yeah. Well, actually, those are other platforms that I hadn't even thought about. So they're a great idea. Okay. Cool.
That was all the agenda items.
Say again?
I would say that was all the agenda items.
Yeah, well, I'm good. That was an awful lot for me, and I guess we have a lot of chatter between ourselves to do.
Okay, I hope everybody's keeping dry.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Martin, want to sync up with you on latest on the Atmel firmware updating. Sounds like you're pulling some code to port.
Oh yeah. I'm sorry about that. I've just been so waylaid by other projects.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll get that to you. I am so close to getting this repeater going. I think what I may do is Mickey Lustig at Cal offered me a tracker, so I might take him up on one of those, one of the 2-band trackers, APRS and Whisper trackers, and go with one of those and do the crossband repeater.
Cool, that sounds great. And yeah, if you have a version, when if you get to start to get functional with that, I mean, I think I've got, I mean, I've got the ones you gave me, so I can try replicating the setup.
Yes.
And then also just want to mention winter field days coming up end of the month. So I'm planning to do something over in Mountain View. As it's been, I don't have expectations of balloon launches anytime soon, but if anybody's interested in getting together and just getting on the air or catching up on some of the projects, I think we'll have at least a handful of folks getting together. Is anybody going to Quartz Fest? Because they're definitely going to be launching a number of balloons.
When is it?
It's in a couple of weeks. It's the last full week of the month, and there should be at least one launch every day. And the last launch that they did last year is the one that stayed up for 142 days and went around 10 times.
That's cool.
He's the one that got bow hooked,
Yeah,
so.
that's how I found the weather balloons, because was watching the skies, and then all of a sudden I started seeing balloons everywhere.
I'm just amazed at how many years we were in this hobby and didn't know about the weather balloons and weren't tracking them.
Yeah, I only stumbled across it because, yeah, like Risa, I was watching Quartz Fest balloon on APRS, and one of the balloon tracking stations across the bay had it fed into the APRS gateway. So I thought it was an amateur balloon or something, but I was able to track it back to Oakland and eventually put the pieces together.
Actually, Bo, one other thing that we had talked about manufacturing and possibly using either that facility in Glendale or the supply, what's it called? The Hackaday crew.
Yeah. The design lab in Pasadena.
Right.
Yeah, they've and there's also, we've got a more basic pick and place at circuit launch, but the design lab's got a Neodin 4 and the paste jig and the reflow, and I mean they they were fabricating a ton of the con badges this year, which was no small trick. So definitely a nice setup to do some batches.
So do you have to do anything special to get stuff done there? Or so I have some pull with Elliot Williams, and I'm not sure where he is in the food chain with that, but I can ask him for some help with that, or if you have anybody we could ask about that. That might be a nice way to get the pie boards done.
Yeah, well, I know Magenta quite well, and she's the one who oversees the entire design lab.
Oh, okay.
And also Giovanni, who Ricky and I coordinated with to do the workshop. He is, I can't remember if he's focused on design lab or supply frame, but they both are very close to that. So technically, you know, it can be challenging to work with, and that they do a whole residency program, but have a really good long-term relationship with them, and they're always eager and interested to work with open source and educational projects. So I think it'd be the sort of thing too, where could potentially design like an open house night, where if we were down there and doing a few days of stuff, and then also do some kind of event with them, I think that's something that they could kind of do ad hoc aside from their usual program, so long as it's not, especially like now, because until SuperCon rolls around, things will be fairly quiet and whatnot. But yeah, it's a really interesting space and group around there, and also I know there's a balloon contingent in San Diego and Southern California in general, so I think that's definitely worth exploring. Oh, and the one other one that I wanted to bring up is I met one of the Hackaday Prize winners this year, who's doing a amateur radio-based project called Boondock, and it's basically designed to kind of time shift communications. So if you're somewhere where you don't have a guaranteed link, you can be monitoring local traffic, and then when you have a link, you then have all this stuff that you can basically store and forward. So they would also grease the wheels in terms of a project at Supply Frame or at the design lab. And in terms of like as a repeater and things like that, some of the things they're doing might be an interesting payload. So I'll bring that up next time I talk to them as well.
Okay, great.
What is their costing like for getting small batches of stuff done?
Yeah, I mean, there really isn't one. Basically, so Supply Frame, which is now part of Siemens, it basically like underwrites Hackaday, and the design lab is really their in-house makerspace. slash showpiece. So they really don't have like a defined commercialized model. And they just work on different projects from time to time. So it's, I mean, and also like they have a very close relationship with DigiKey. So there's the potential that we could get the machine time, some resources and some parts all contributed. And it's just the sort of thing where they want to support making it happen, and it's good PR for them.
Interesting. Yeah, because I know Martin and I have talked about when it gets to the point of doing some more reasonable, more significant numbers of boards at a time. I mean, I can talk to my factory that I have do all of our boards, but they don't want to talk to me if it's less than 100 units. It's not worth their time.
Yeah, I also have somebody that I know from Kickstarter who is at Hacker Dojo from time to time, and they're basically like a full service development shop, and they have a small team in Shenzhen and can do pretty small projects, and are also particularly interested in, even if we were, you know, doing a relatively small number, but it's something we'd want to do on some recurring basis. So maybe we're still only talking like over a year or more, you know, hundreds-ish. They have a really streamlined system that can be run at a relatively small scale. So I mean, yeah.
I got to run. Nice meeting you.
Thank you,
Be in
Randy.
touch.
Bye.
Yeah, so we should probably talk more about some of these different places, because there used to be a small PCB shop run by a ham down in Gilroy. I guess it's up in, well, down in Gilroy for you guys, or up in Gilroy for me, who had offered to do some boards for us a long time ago, but I haven't been in contact with them in a while. And he was going to charge us $10 a board for the full assembly of each board, loading the pick and place, doing that, running it through the line, running it through the ovens, and doing all that for $10 a board. So if we were going to do 10 or 20 boards, it wasn't a whole lot of money. As long as it was a ham related project, he was interested in participating.
That sounds good too. Yeah, we're not quite there yet, so
Yeah.
good
Well,
to
Martin, we down here, we would very much like to have a good supply of reasonably priced boards that we can put on the long duration balloons or in our buoys.
Mhm.
And right now we have the option of Bill's board, and we've been playing, Randy's been playing with the new QRP Labs ones, and there's issues that Randy is finding with QRP Labs, and they're not real responsive about making changes. So Randy's basically going to use the ones he's got, and I don't think he wants to do any more playing after that.
Okay.
So yes, we would, whether it's yours or Kazu's board, I'm not fussy. We talked about the one I did. I just happen to have it here handy. This is the one I did a long time ago. It's double-sided with the same, probably recognize the GPS on it. It was using the chip sensor for the chip antenna for the GPS, but it has issues with the firmware, which I was working on, but then it's got an STM32 based processor on there that I can't buy. That's my biggest problem with a lot of these cool projects, is people are finding these great chips, but I can't buy them in quantity. But the 2040, that's not a problem. We've got those. The only question for you, Kazu, and then I really need to drop off because it's way past my call. Have you done any testing with power yet?
A power? What do you mean by power?
How many milliamps of power is the
From the GPI?
2040 thing drawing compared to, say, a 328 or other chip that you guys might have been using in the past?
No, I haven't tried.
My understanding is it's half an order of magnitude or an order of magnitude more than a 328, which might be an issue, but
Sorry, power mean the power consumption?
Yeah, the power consumption. So it's like
okay.
120 milliamps or something, or 130 milliamps when it's running.
I think it depends on the clock. So it's a that has a PLL for the clock. So if you reduce the clock, I think the power consumption.
Well, I look forward to your reports on the subject.
Okay.
Actually, I
Okay.
looked at that just a little bit, and there's some really cool things you can do with the Pi. There's dynamic clock control, and it just works. You tell it to run at one speed and then another. And so probably a lot of times you're just sleeping or something like that. You could be running at 33 and a third or whatever.
Okay, well, I look forward to more information on that because it does concern me, because we had this conversation at the beginning of the call here about large arrays of solar cells.
Well, I'm just running this stupid crossband repeater, analog crossband repeater, and it's going to be sending out narrowband at 0.5 watt. So, the math kind of, yeah.
Well, we're most interested in hearing about it.
Okay.
But yes, we would love to have an inexpensive supply of boards. We would like to do a lot more flights with the students at the schools, especially if we're using the Yokohama balloons that seem to be working pretty well compared to the SBS balloons. I guess the other question was, whatever happened to the balloons that we sent up there?
Oh, they're in my office right here.
Okay.
I never got them to Ted or David rather, and
okay, well,
we lost you.
hello.
Oh, you're
Okay,
back.
you're back.
Okay, yeah, the school spent a lot of money on the balloons. If there's any of them that are flyable, we'd like to know and we'd like to fly them. If they're not flyable, then we understand that it's just a sunk cost.
I can send them to David and have him make a assertion of what, determine what we want to do with that. Yeah.
So I got a nod out of David, so I guess that's a yes.
Okay.
There we
I
go.
will send them to you.
I pressed the space bar, but it didn't do what it was supposed to do. Yeah, there's no problem. I mean, I'll pump them up to 0.2 PSI and let you know if they're holding. And you know enough about the pressurizing to realize all that is. So
Yeah.
no problem.
Yeah, because when I took them up to PacificCon, we had no skills in that area. More recently, Randy has his own setup, but David, I believe you've been testing SBSs in the past, and I'd love to hear your opinions on the ones that we bought.
Yeah, sure. No, I'm curious as to how you lost balloons during ascent, because you should never have had super pressure. So it just baffles me what could have been going wrong. But
So
what went wrong?
we did get one back, and a seam had gone on one of the ones that we flew.
Ah. Well, okay, there's the alternative then of going around the seams with the iron and just guaranteeing the seal was a little bit better.
Yeah.
Sounds like you might have got a batch where they didn't have the machine running right.
Well, we've complained a lot, and they keep saying there's nothing wrong with our balloons. And then a few months later, they go, we have a new machine that does a double seal now and improved over. And there's okay, so you're essentially saying all the ones before were bad. So we had 4 out of 5 fail on the way up.
Yeah, I still am puzzled by that because it just doesn't strike me that you had any super pressure. So what pulled the balloon apart?
I don't know. It's a great question. We did eventually get one back, but I've never seen it and didn't get to do the post-mortem on it. But if I remember correctly, one of the seams had let go, a small section of one seam along the side, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it must have not been heat sealed at all for that to actually happen. Because until you get up to the 40,000 foot range, and I don't think you ever got there, there is no super pressure.
Yeah, so we did get one flight that made it up and died in a storm over Manitoba. We had another one disappear in a storm off South Carolina. So we were getting some flights. And then we had the one that we launched from the university that went around 5 times. So, but we had a series of one after another that was failing almost the same time at the same altitude. And that was bad news. And we did eventually get one back, and I think it was a seam. So, you know, those balloons are not cheap, and getting money at the school is not easy. And
Yeah,
so if we can fly them, I'd like to.
I've purchased several of them myself, and when the majority of the purchase price or the majority of the launch cost is just the balloon, it's really kind of discouraging. Yokohama is so much superior to SBS.
Yeah, well, Randy's buying them for us down here from Yokohama directly, and that they've done pretty well so far for us. So, but Martin, if you can get the school's ones over to David, and if you don't mind testing and giving us a result, that would be helpful.
Sure.
And if you think it's safe to fly, then we would love to get it back, because you know how much money we have spent. And
Yeah, no problem. And I'll inspect them to see if the seams look intact. I might, just out of orneriness, heat seal the seams again, because I don't know whether you know the history of what SBS used to recommend, but they had a little hand iron that they were using, or they were suggesting you use to seal, before they realized everybody's having success with the impulse sealer, and they switched to talking about the impulse sealer. But I can go around I can follow straight lines and go around the balloon and give it a redo.
okay, well,
See,
it would be wonderful. You guys can help with that, because the students, we had our meeting at the first meeting of the year at the school this afternoon. The students, and in the middle of the meeting, we had one of the students raise his hand, go, "So when's our next balloon launch?"
Yeah, it's a fun thing for them.
Yeah.
Fun thing for us.
Yeah. So we want to help with that, and we're going to be ordering a whole bunch more of the K-Monts. You know, they give us a really wonderful price for the school. They give us an absolutely wonderful price discount.
Who did? And for those are Yokohamas, or
No, K-Mont, the latex balloons.
Oh, I see.
What size are you buying?
If we're just flying the Sans, we're flying the 200s.
Okay,
And they're giving them to us for $16 each,
wow,
including shipping with no tax.
very good.
Yeah, and they seem to really want to have them shipped directly to the teacher at the school, and we're perfectly okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
They really want to help with education. I mean, I just call them up and say, we want to buy another batch, and they say, no problem. They've been really good about it. And we've flown a few of the larger ones, like a 600, and we're planning to try and do that again, and we'll do a simultaneous launch with the weather service, because we've done that in the past, where we have them on the phone and they say, okay, 3, 2, 1, and then we release and they release. And so that's been fun. And we discussed again today the 1200 that we want to fly, because we have this big camera rig that's sitting in my garage for over 3 years that we want to fly. So
Sounds good.
anyway, it is 8:30 and I really need to drop off, but this has been wonderful, Martin, and everybody. Thank you so much. I think everybody's got all our emails. Let's keep in contact.
But we can have another call like this in 2 months or something like that.
Depends on if we've got a lot to talk about, maybe.
Yeah.
If it's been an eventful month, maybe.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks for organizing, Martin.
Okay. Actually, it was Robert who did all the heavy lifting, so thank him.
Thank you, Robert.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Nice.
Cool. We'll see you guys.
We'll see you.
Okay, see ya. Bye-bye.
I see you.